In the property management business, there is so much that goes into getting new tenants. Most of it is pretty typical, like screening them, creating the lease agreement, and signing it. However, there's a lot more that goes into new tenants moving in your rental property. One of the most important things is the Landlord-Tenant checklist, also known as the move-in checklist for landlords. This form is filled out when a new tenant moves in. This checklist is extremely important, so if you don't know much about it, we recommend you keep watching. The ultimate landlord-tenant checklist for landlords with incoming tenants. To get started, we'll be going over what these checklists are and why they're important. What is a landlord-tenant checklist? A landlord-tenant checklist is a list of things that should be done and inspected before and during the tenant's move-in process. The same checklist applies for when the tenant moves out, as that is when property damage is typically noticed. This checklist is important because it clearly outlines the condition of the property for both the landlord and the tenant. Filling out this checklist is also helpful because it can be used when the tenant's security deposit is in question. If the difference between the move-in and move-out checklists extends past normal wear and tear, the security deposit can be affected. For this reason, it is extremely important that these inspections are conducted in person with the tenant, instead of over the internet. This is because you want to be able to ensure the tenant that what is being written down is actually true. There are also some other reasons why it should be done in person, which we will go over later. It is also important to make sure that all the checklists are done according to local and state laws. This completely depends on where you're located. What to include in your landlord-tenant checklist. Next, let's go over some of the most important things that must be done before the tenant moves into the property. Pre-inspecting the property. For the landlord, it is beneficial if the initial checklist does not highlight many issues with the property. So, to mitigate the risk of this happening, a pre-inspection should always be conducted. This part of the process is extremely important because it is essential for the property to be in good shape for prospective tenants. If it is done correctly, the landlord will not even have to worry about inspecting the property before the tenant moves in. Although it may seem like property managers and landlords keep their properties in good condition all year long, it is very easy for a vacant property to remain untouched for long periods of time. Especially in these cases, maintenance should be considered at least a few times a year. Provide the checklist beforehand. This is a very simple task between the landlord and the tenant that can save a ton of time. By doing this, you ensure that you and the tenant are on the same page and can move through the property much quicker. Another benefit of this is that it helps with forming a stronger relationship with the tenant. By doing the checklist together, you get a chance to speak to the tenant and find out more about them. Completing the checklist together. This has benefits for both the tenant and the landlord. For the tenant, it can be a chance for them to ask questions about the property. These can be about the methods to pay rent, how to use online rent payments, how to report maintenance issues, or how to use a particular property management software. And for the landlord, it is a good time to explain to the tenant all of their responsibilities. These responsibilities can be things like changing the batteries in the carbon monoxide detectors, keeping areas of the rental unit clean, or explaining how to make rent payments. This is also the perfect time to explain to the tenant anything about the first month's rent or the security deposit. Another benefit of completing the checklist together is that it minimizes the risk of a dispute when the tenant moves out. To protect this even further, it is always advised that the tenant signs the checklist after it is finished. Identifying the difference between normal wear and tear and damage. Next, and possibly the most important part, is making sure to differentiate between normal wear and tear and actual damages. This is extremely important because it could cause a lot of trouble between the landlord and the tenant. There are many places within the household that suffer from normal wear and tear. Some of these places include carpets, stairs, blinds, or bathroom tiles. However, if any of these places or any other place in the household has damages that can be classified as normal wear and tear, it should be reported to the tenant and potentially taken out of the security deposit. However, always remember to refer to the landlord-tenant laws in your area to make sure that everything that you're doing is in compliance with the law. So, now that you know how to prepare for the landlord-tenant checklist, let's talk about what to include in a landlord-tenant checklist. Documenting all issues. Another very important thing to do at all times is to document all of the issues in the property. This means taking pictures or videos of any issues you see with the property after the tenant moves out. This step is important because it helps in ensuring a fair process with the tenant in terms of the condition of the property. The notes and media that are used here can also be used in court to assist your case in the case that the tenant decides to dispute any claims. If you're not sure about what you should be checking or inspecting, we got you covered. Check out DoorLoop's resources page to gain access to a free rental inspection checklist and much more. Follow all laws. Finally, it is extremely important to make sure that throughout everything that you do with the tenant, you're following all the laws. This means following all of the state's laws as well as all the local laws. Because if the laws are not followed closely, the whole process can end in a hefty lawsuit. One of the best ways to achieve this is by having documentation of all of your state's landlord-tenant laws. Not sure where to find this? No worries. Of course, I'm not an attorney and I cannot give you any legal advice, but you can check out DoorLoop's laws page to learn about all of the state laws that you should consider. There's a link right there in the description where you can find tons of resources and content on topics such as the complete guide to late rental fees for landlords, or the complete guide to deciphering fake pay stubs, and much more. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our channel for more real estate content. And as always, happy renting.